All right, God's plan is to stop all wars and bring peaceful living to all humans on the planet. And this is the day. God is planning a day to show his face and become visible to all humans. This is going to be a day like no other in any human history. From the beginning of human history to the end of human history, there'll be no other day like this. And he's going to stop humans from destroying themselves. We'll see that in the scripture in a little bit. Jesus, the Creator, calls this day the day of God's wrath. And Zephaniah, which I'd studied a little bit, and it's amazing. You know, God has salted little scriptures here and there to show, if you join all the scriptures together, you get the big picture of the day of trumpets. Zephaniah 1:14, the great day of the Lord has come near in a hurry and hastens quickly. So, you know, God is eager to get this done. He's been waiting for not exactly 6,000 years, because he made Adam 6,000 years ago, so things weren't too bad in the first couple of days in the Garden of Eden. But he's been waiting a long time to stop humans and their craziness. He stopped them for a while in Noah's day with the flood, but okay, it says, the noise of that day, the Lord, is bitter, and that bitter could be translated thundering heat. I'm not sure why, thundering heat doesn't seem to fit, although it will a little bit later on. But I'm not sure why they chose bitter instead of thundering heat. And the mighty men shall cry out, verse 15, that day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, a day of devastation and desolation, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thickness. Now, it won't be to God's believers. It won't be true to the faithful. And I just thought about this a little bit earlier. When did the day of trumpets start?
Sunset last night.
Last night, right? So we're more than halfway through the day of trumpets, right? And if God is in a big hurry, there's a good chance that he could start, he could scroll the sky open, and we could look up and see the face of God the Father and Jesus Christ on the white horse. We could see that right at the beginning of the day of trumpets, which was, last night at sunset. So could we say that this day will be a day of unbelievable shock and awe to the planet? It's like human beings will have Jesus Christ on earth ruling them in the form of the beast power, and they'll be worshiping Satan. The Roman Catholic Church will be helping the beast power in his mission. And suddenly the sky will open up and they'll see the face of God the Father, and they'll see Jesus Christ. So Zephaniah 1:16, a day of trumpet and alarm. Now notice there it says, it uses the trumpet word in Hebrew, and it uses the alarm word, and that's the clamor word. Most people, when they read in Leviticus, they read trumpets because that was the best effort the translators could come up with. Because if they'd have written what it says in Hebrew, clamor means nothing. The day of clamor. It doesn't tell you much of anything, right? But that's what God wrote in Hebrew, right? And so the closest they could come with blowing of trumpets, and it's not too bad, because in Zephaniah 1:16 it says a day of trumpet and alarm against the fortified cities. So the Strong's there for Hebrews, it just means clamor, but it also means acclamation of joy or battle cry, which you would think were two totally opposite feelings, right? And that's what's going to when God comes, there's going to be two totally opposite feelings. Those who, Gary Pettit and lots of others will rise to meet Jesus in the sky, and Gary was a pretty joyful kind of a guy. He's going to be way more joyful, right? And all of us, especially those of us who are getting on in years, we're going to have a brand new, young, forevermore spirit being body, and we are going to smile from ear to ear so big, it would destroy a human face, but we'll have a godly spirit being face, so it won't be such a problem. So acclamation of joy, or battle cry, or both, right? And that's really what the Day of Trumpets is going to be. When God gave the fourth annual festival, he said in Leviticus 23:24, the seventh month, first day of the month, you shall have a Sabbath rest, a memorial, which should have been translated memento, because memorial normally means something happened in the past. Now you have a memorial. 9/11, we have a memorial of the first day of 9/11. On, Pearl Harbor Day, the event happened, and then every year we have the memorial of the first day. So it means memento. Think engagement ring. When a lady puts an engagement ring on her finger, it's looking forward to the marriage day. And so God wants us looking forward to this Day of Trumpets. Dictionary for clamor is a loud outcry or shouting, but I like God's definition better in Strong's, where acclamation of joy and or battle cry. In Zephaniah, God's description is heavily on a time of war, right? And you sew Zephaniah in with many other scriptures and you get the full picture. Verse 16, a day of trumpet alarm against the fortified city. So we commonly call this day Feast of Trumpets, right? Which, nobody's going to change to calling it the Feast of Clamor, right? But that's the intent, that's the picture God is painting. In Leviticus, there's no description of how we are to celebrate this day, right? And unless you say a memorial of blowing trumpets, then you could say, well, maybe that's what God wants us to do on the Day of Trumpets, but that's not really what he's saying. And if we had a bunch of trumpeters come in here and blow trumpets for 10 minutes, it'd be a fun sound, right? But it has very little spiritual meaning all by itself. So when we study Revelation, we see that the seventh day trumpet is both an alarm of war and rejoicing. And our rejoicing will start in a split second when we're in a spirit being body, and it will never end. But the day, the description of the day we saw in Zephaniah, is God is coming back to whoop up on the beast empire and to stop human beings from destroying planet Earth. By then, the nuclear war will be history, and the beast power will be, killing a third of mankind. Who knows what condition the world will be in, especially in Europe. So Revelation 11:15, the seventh angel sounded, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever. That's at the sound of the seventh trumpet. And it's like, but Jesus, you haven't defeated the enemy yet. No, but in God's mind, it's a done deal, right? And here's the proclamation. Now we're going to make the proclamation come true. Verse 17, we give thanks, O Lord God Almighty, the one who is and who was and who is to come, because you have taken your great power and reigned. Now, Jesus meets the resurrected saints and the still living saints in the clouds. They go to the Mount of Olives. Jesus puts his feet on the Mount of Olives. It splits it. And Jesus takes control of the city of Jerusalem. Now, what's the military of the beast power going to do when they see the sky full of white horses, right? What What do military people do when there's some strange object in the sky? They scramble jets, right? And I've been watching Top Gun a couple of times, and the jets, they send the jets over to where the horses are, and they say, we're going to fire, missiles at these white horses, because obviously they don't belong and they're not part of what we're doing. They must be an alien force faking to be on white horses. So we're going to lock on target and we're going to shoot these white horses out of the sky. But if they fire any missiles, what do you think will happen to the missiles? Just keep on going.
I was thinking like the Iron Dome, turn around.
Well, yeah, except I don't know that the beast power will need an Iron Dome because he's pretty much got control of the whole planet. But he'll still have jet fighters and they'll still have missiles on the wingtips. But that could be a lot of fun. and we'll be seeing whatever they do, they want to try and destroy this invading alien force coming out of the sky, and the loud noise and they're terrified. We'll see that in a minute. So a quick summary: seventh trumpet sounds, heaven says the world belongs to Christ, God has taken his power and reign. Verse 18 shows the two parts of the world of this word clamor. The nations were angry and your wrath has come. So it's a battle cry. It's like we're going to war, Christ is coming to make war, and the time of the dead should be judged, and you should reward your servants, the prophets and the saints. Okay, that's the joy, joy, joy. That's, and we wish that the beast power wasn't going to be satanically worshipping and killing a third of mankind and, disobeying God at every turn. So here's where we see the two great opposites on the same day. The saints get rewarded, that's fantastic joy. Jesus makes war, that's going to be the third woe. And, when Jesus brings a woe to human beings, it's a bad woe, right? And there's going to be a lot of suffering. So Jesus wants humans rehearsing this coming day every year to focus their minds on the day when the Creator becomes highly visible. People say, I don't believe there is God. Show me God. If God would show himself to me, I will believe in God. Well, guess what? God the Father will show himself, and Jesus will show himself, and they won't believe it's God. It's like it's a Steven Spielberg movie or something, and the aliens are trying to trick us. Revelation 1:7. Behold, he's coming with clouds, and every eye shall see him, even those who pierced him, the Roman soldiers, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn because of him. So how is this possible? Well, for God it's easy. God's a miracle working God. He can implant every human memory bank with a vision of this most awesome day. I was thinking a little bit earlier, when the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock, is that where they landed? Right? Thank you. All right. If they had got off the ship and they said, let's start celebrating the 4th of July. And somebody would say, you're crazy. What 4th of July? What are you talking about? That's nutty. Why pick the 4th of July? Because in the future, the 4th of July will represent Freedom Day from the British Empire, right? Well, nobody knew that was going to happen. God knows we're here rehearsing the Day of Trumpets because God knows it's coming. It is coming. It's like a freight train coming down the railroad track. It's going to get here when God is ready for it to get here. Zephaniah gives more data about this day of wrath. Verse 17, I will bring distress upon men, and they shall walk like blind men. Interesting. Because they have sinned against the Lord, their blood shall be poured out like dust, and their flesh like refuge. Okay, compare that with what God says in Revelation, right? And we'll do that in just a little bit. Verse 18, the whole land will be devoured by fire, the fire of his jealousy, for he will make speedy riddance of all those who dwell on the land. He's going to clean up rapidly. In Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 1, gather yourselves together, yes, gather yourselves, O undesirable nation, meaning the beast empire. Okay, question, where does verse 17 tie in with Zechariah 14:12? It says, the plague shall be with the Lord will strike them who fought against Jerusalem, Battle of Armageddon, they come to fight against Jerusalem, and their flesh shall dissolve while they stand on their feet, their eyes shall dissolve in their sockets, and their tongues shall dissolve in their mouths. Now, if you were a soldier standing next to another soldier that suffered this, his eyes dissolve, now he's a blind man, his eyes dissolve in his sockets, right? Or his tongue dissolves in his mouth, right? Or his flesh dissolves while he stands on his feet. Would you panic? Now, I'm not saying, this is not happening to you, because if this was happening to you, you would definitely be panicking, right? But if this is happening to your soldier or your captain, your lieutenant, right, and he's right next to you and you see this happening, would you panic, right? The answer is yes, you would panic. Verse 13, it shall come to pass that a great panic from the Lord will be among them, right? Right? Everyone will seize the hand of his neighbor, not to shake hands, but to kill each other, and raise his hand against his neighbor's hand. They'll just start killing each other, which God did back in the Old Testament. There's a couple of examples of that. Zephaniah 1:17 says, their blood shall be poured out like dust. Revelation shows there will be blood to the horse's bridle for 180 miles, which is pretty much the Jordan, from Galilee, the Jordan River, down to the Dead Sea. That's about 180 miles down there, and actually down to Eilat. Revelation 14:20. The winepress was trampled outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the horse's bridle. Right? So is that here? Is that average horse's bridle here? Right? That's deep blood, right? And if it's down into the Jordan River, then it's where the water used to be, only now it's blood. For 600 furlongs, which turns out to be about 180 miles. So, joy for the resurrected believers in 1 second, in one split second, and joy will never end, right? You might get sick of joy. I don't know, right? Anybody had joy for 24 hours nonstop? I think we're going to have joy forever and ever and ever, because this body that I've got is going to be traded in for a perfect spirit, ever-living body. Matthew 24:29. Immediately after the tribulation, which is when woe 2 ends, of those days the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars from heaven will fall, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. Verse 30, and then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, because they've been worshipping Satan, they've been worshipping the beast, they've been worshipping the image of the beast. They're happy, they think they've started the millennium under this fake Jesus Christ beast person, and everything is settling down. The 200 million man army is just about finished killing the third of mankind who won't worship the beast, right? And the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. Verse 31, he will send his angels, right? We heard this in the song. He'll send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds. All right? Question, what happens the week before Jesus appears in the sky? Everybody's got memorized, you will not know the day or the hour of Christ's coming. And I believe that's true, right? But he didn't say, you won't know what week is coming. He didn't say, you won't know the week, right? Okay, Revelation 11:8. Their dead bodies will lie in the street of the great city. Verse 9, those from the tribes and tongues and nations will see their dead bodies 3.5 days and not allow their dead bodies to be put in graves. So there'll be young TV reporters running TV cameras and they'll be live streaming this on YouTube around the world, and they'll all be happy. There'll be these two dressed in sackcloth prophets of God, right, or fake aliens, whatever. Verse 10, those who dwell on earth will rejoice over them and make merry and send gifts. They're going to be thrilled that they're dead. 3.5 days, there's their body lying in the streets. It's so wonderful that they're dead. Revelation 11:11. Now after 3.5 days, the breath of life from God entered them, and they stood on their feet. Houston, we have a problem. We got to stop this merrymaking because they're now alive again. Oh no, what are we going to do? Verse 12. And they heard a loud voice from heaven saying, "Come up here." Right? And I imagine that's going to sound real good to them. I suspect that as these words are being said, "Come up here," the dead in Christ will be rising out of their graves. The alive in Christ will be standing on their tippy toes like, me next, right? After the dead in Christ have gone, it's my turn, take me. Right, come up here, and they ascended to heaven. All right, there are 3 heavens. What's the first heaven? Where the clouds are. So they didn't go to God's throne heaven, 3rd heaven. They went up to meet Jesus in the cloud, and their enemies saw them, and their enemies were really unhappy because, oh no, what if we have another 3.5 years of the 2 witnesses, right? So this is when the second woe ends and the third woe begins, the 7th trumpet. Verse 14. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe is coming quickly. Then the 7th angel sounded. Question: have you ever wondered why God put Atonement Day on the 10th day of the 7th month? The first day, trumpets, is hugely joyful for God's servants, right? And the Day of Atonement is like no other day because we don't get to eat or drink for 24 hours. And by 3/4 of the way through, our stomachs start talking to us. It's like, oh, and our throat is so thirsty. It's like, oh, I wish I could have a drink, right? God has a purpose, right? But on day 1 of the 7th trumpet is Clamor Day or Trumpets Day. Day 10 is Atonement Day and fasting. What happens between day 1, trumpets, and day 10? Well, day 1 is meet Jesus in the clouds and split the mountain. And what else? What else might Jesus do on day 1? Doesn't say. But what if he starts pouring out the 7 last plagues? What if the first one is poured out on day 1, right? How long is it going to take Jesus, right? You've got a 24-hour day. How long is it going to take Jesus to, 1, appear in the sky, come down with the angels, stop in the cloud, send the angels out to gather people from their grave sites, meet Jesus in the thing, and then travel to the Mount of Olives. And now the jet aeroplanes, and I don't think the white horses will show up on radar. I think it'll be a visual thing. I see white horses. Where are they going? Oh, they're landing on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. So now we know where this alien force is setting up camp. It's in Jerusalem on the Mount of Olives, or what used to be the Mount of Olives, right? So Jesus appears in the sky, picturing the wrath of God. So I brought my almost white horse, right? And no, he wasn't dead, but I saw this, and I said, I gotta buy a white horse. I should get some white paint and paint it white. But anyhow, just use your imagination, right? And then instead of calling it a horse, we should call it a stallion, a great white stallion, right? So in the past, I don't know why I did this, I pictured a beautiful, quiet, serene parade of white horses slowly descending through the atmosphere, right? and I was wrong. That is not how Paul was inspired to describe this. 2 Thessalonians 1:6 and 1:7. 1:7 it says, to give you who are troubled rest with us when the Lord Jesus is revealed from heaven. Notice what the next few words are. With his mighty angels, verse 8, in flaming fire. And why did Paul say that? Right? Are we getting a little fragment of description that goes with, right? So what if the biggest white horse has to be Jesus, right? It just has to be, right? Because he's the general. He's leading the army, right? So what if the rider and the white horse appear in flaming fire? Right? That's a little more impressive, isn't it? Right? And what if they're galloping towards Earth? Right? Remember the song Ghost Riders in the Sky? Anybody remember that? Old-timey song? Right? So now my picture is in flaming fire. This is like, when an asteroid comes through the atmosphere, it's on fire. It's flaming, right? And remember it said the stars fall from heaven. Ever seen a shooting star, a big shooting star evening, shooting everywhere? So maybe the white horses, flaming fire, appear like shooting stars, right? So flaming fire, taking vengeance on those who do not know God, on those who do not obey the gospel of God, which for 3.5 years, the worship of Satan, the worship of the beast, the false prophet, the killing of people who are not going to worship the image of the beast. It's, God is most displeased with the way humankind ended up. So what will most people see on the seventh trumpet? They will see flaming fire, white horses galloping towards them, right? And how will they react? Well, God gave us how they will react. Revelation 6:16, they said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us, hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne. Wow. Other people, okay, you may not see this from Earth's point of view, right? It just all depends on the timing. It's like if the very first thing that happens is the sky scrolls back and all humanity looks up and sees the face of him that sits on a throne and Jesus on the white horse, right? And I guess if you see him just beginning to ride, then he hasn't sent the angels to gather us. So will Gary Pettit see this or not? I don't know, right? But it's too good not to miss, right? It's too good. Everybody's got to see this, because seeing the face of God on the throne, seeing Jesus, riding and flaming fire, it's just everybody needs to see this. But when we see it, what's our brain going to tell us? Joy, 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 right? Right? Because this is it. This is the moment we've been rehearsing in the Day of Trumpets. This is the moment we've been working towards, right? We want to enter God's family. We want to enter eternal life bodies. We want this. So, seeing the face of God, I expect we will see that face smiling at us. While the earthlings, right, those who are not serving God, they will probably see an angry face, because it's the wrath of God. So, Revelation 16:6 again, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, because they're scared spitless. This is scary stuff. Now, there's flaming horses, there's falling stars, there's thunder and lightning, and we saw that description back in Zephaniah. They have gloominess and darkness, and just the description goes on and on and on. It's a horrible day for those who are not being resurrected. For everybody else, it's a horrible day, right? For the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? So God, in anger, is sending Jesus to whoop up on humankind who have gone into 3.5 years of Satan worship. They've gone into 3.5 years of worshiping the beast and killing all kinds of people. So question, is this face a happy face? Yes. Is this face a happy face? No. It depends who you are at the time, right? So God shows that they are scared spitless when they see this. Part of Christ's mission is to destroy his enemies. That's how long will it take to resurrect the saints? Just what, split second?
Moment in the twinkling of an eye.
There you go. That's it. There's an exact scriptural description. A moment, a tiny few seconds or less, right?
Well, that's when we'll be changed to a moment in twinkling of an eye.
Yeah, well, when Gary comes out of the grave, he don't want to come out in the old body, right? It's like, oh no, what happened? You know. So, yeah, when his eyes come awake, surely he's going to be in the spirit body. You won't have a decayed flesh body to work with. So in a split second, we will see the face of God the Father on the throne, and it will be smiling on us, because it's like Dad saying, "Welcome home," right? So Christ's mission, the big part of the mission, which is going to take much longer than just a couple split seconds, is to destroy his enemies. Revelation 16:1. Then I heard the loud voice from the temple saying to the 7 angels, "Go, pour out your bowls of wrath, wrath of God on earth." Number 2, verse 2. The first angel with the bowl of wrath went and poured out his bowl on the earth, and the foul, loathsome sore came on those who worshipped, the beast in his image. Okay, so a foul, loathsome sore. Anybody had a boil? Anybody here? Right. Okay. This is going to be much worse than a boil. This is going to be a horrible thing. And does it have to be the 2nd day of the 7th month or the 4th day of the 7th month? When? It doesn't tell us when. So what if it's the first day? What if it's in the day of trumpets? What if the first one gets poured out on the day of trumpets, right? Because he's in a hurry to defeat the armies of the beast, right? And I'm just going to guess that there's something like 200 million man army, because in woe number 2, the beast's power gets together a 200 million man army, and the 200 million man army is spread out over quite a lot of territory, and they're killing a third of mankind. Well, at what point do they stop killing a third of mankind, and the 7th trumpet starts, and it's like the beast power sees all these white horses in the sky, flaming red white horses, right? Maybe the riders are in, it doesn't say the riders are white, does it? Anyhow. So they're going to, we've got to go fight whatever that is, and we obviously can't shoot them down with missiles, because the missiles just go right through and nothing happens. So we've got to fight them another way. Okay, the second one is okay. Christ's purpose for the 7 last plagues is to hurt the people that worship Satan and the beast, and to anger them, and to bring them to Israel, to Jerusalem, to fight Christ. In Revelation 11:18, the nations were angry, your wrath has come, the time of the dead, right? And he should destroy those who destroy the earth, right? And the earth is going to be very much different than the earth you're looking at right now today. So Revelation 11:18 is Christ's mission statement. He's coming back to reward the saints. He's coming back to destroy those who destroy the earth. God had this mission plan spelled out in Ezekiel's day. Ezekiel 39:2. I will turn you around and lead you bringing you against Israel. Verse 4, you shall fall upon the mountains of Israel, and I will give you to the birds of prey. What does that remind you of? The bird's supper in Revelation, right? And to the beasts of the field to be devoured. Verse 9, then those of Israel will go out and set fire and burn the weapons. Okay, when the sky scrolls back and they see the face of God the Father on the throne, Israel's not in Jerusalem. They're in prison camps. Luke tells us that they either died in the battle or they went to prison camps. The second Exodus hasn't occurred yet. So, but it will occur pretty quick. You know, maybe on the first day, maybe on trumpets. It's hard to say. But restored Israel will go out and set fire and burn the weapons, and they will make fires for 7 years. It's like, wow. 7 years worth of burning their weapons. Right? I can't explain that, because most of their weapons are going to be made of metal. Right? So I don't know how that works. Right? Verse 11. It will come to pass in that day that I will give Gog, think, enemies of God, a burial place there in Israel. It will obstruct travelers because they will bury Gog and all his multitude. Therefore they will call the valley of Hamon Gog. So people traveling by the Mediterranean are going to have to detour around this huge cemetery. Why is God doing that? To leave a memorial of what happens to God's enemies. Right? Like now we have this big cemetery up in Washington. What's Arlington, right? Arlington Cemetery, right? Okay. This is like the opposite of Arlington Cemetery. This is where we buried all the bones of the beast powers army when God poured out the bowls of wrath on the army and destroyed them. Verse 12, 7 months Israel will be burying them in order to clear the land. Okay, that's a reference to their bones. Right? Now, if your flesh dissolves, what you going to have left lying on the ground? Right? You're going to have a bone structure. Right? If those who are not struck by that plague start killing each other, right? You're going to have dead bodies lying all over the place, which God predicted with these, here in Ezekiel and in other places. So for 7 months after the day of trumpets, after the day of atonement, when the Battle of Armageddon happens, they'll be burying the bones to cleanse the land. So that's going to be the job of the humans, right? Come back from the second Exodus, come back from the prison camps. They'll be busy, right? Farming, getting food ready for them and their kids, and finding bones and burying them, right, in that special cemetery. So for 7 months after the first great awesome Feast of Tabernacles, I don't expect they'll start, and they probably won't start burying bones until after the first Feast of Tabernacles, right? Which is the 15th day through the 21st. So 4 more bowls of God's wrath, and those of the empire will be super angry and want to destroy this alien force that landed in Jerusalem, and so they want to get their 200 million man army, or as many as they can get across the river Euphrates, down to Jerusalem. Armageddon just means Megiddo, which was a fortress on the valley of Jezreel. The valley of Jezreel is a huge flat, plain where you could camp a whole lot of soldiers in preparation for having an attack against Jerusalem. Revelation 9:16:3. Then the second angel poured out his bowl on the sea, and it became blood as of a dead man, and every living creature in the sea died. Okay, the Mediterranean Sea is underneath Europe. Picture what it would look like if every creature in the Mediterranean Sea died, and the Mediterranean Sea became blood. That's a plague, right there, that's a plague. Verse 4, the third angel poured out his bowl on the rivers and springs, and they became blood. So not only is the Mediterranean Sea turned to blood, now you've got your rivers and your streams turned to blood. This is going to make the beast power unhappy, right? And all the people who worship the beast power unhappy. Verse 8, the fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and power was given to scorch men with fire. How hot is this going to be? Hotter than any human has probably ever experienced. To make the beast power enemy people, soldiers and others who worship the beast, very uncomfortable. They were scorched with great heat, and they blasphemed the name of God, who has power over these plagues, right? Which is, I don't know if they're admitting now that this is God, or this is just God's description of how it's turning out. Fifth angel poured on the throne of the beast, and his kingdom became full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues with pain. Anybody been into a cave and they turned all the lights out and you have black, 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 and you can hold your hand right up in front of your face and you can't see your hand. It's like, I know my hand is in front of my face because I'm touching my nose, but it's so dark I can't see my hand, right? Well, this kind of darkness is painful, right? And so they let's see, it was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues with pain. So there's a great deal of pain for anybody who takes the mark of the beast, anybody who worships Satan, anybody who worships the beast or the image of the beast. They're hurting real bad, right? And the 200 million man army, they're hurting too. And just like American young men, went to join the military on December the 8th after Japan had done its Pearl Harbor thing. These soldiers are going to want to get revenge, right, on this beast power thing, this alien thing that came down from the sky. So by this time, the empire, those in the empire are hopping mad. They want to go kill these white horse people, right? This white horse party, if you like. We've got the Republican Party, we've got the Democratic Party. We are of the white horse party. So notice bowl 6 doesn't seem to be a plague, right? It's listed with the 7 plagues, but it's not really a plague. Verse 12, the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and it was dried up, so the way of the kings from the east might be prepared. So it's like, if you look at a map, Turkey, the mountains of Turkey is where the river Euphrates begins, and then it flows down into Syria and down into Iraq and all the way down to Baghdad, right? And if you want to bring troops across the Euphrates River, you have to use bridges right now, right? Every now and then I hear people say the river is drying up. Well, when God does this miracle, there's going to be water in the river, because otherwise it'd be like, oh, I already dried it up. It's been dried for a couple of weeks, a couple of years. Right? No, it's the bowl number 6. So the great river Euphrates was dried up so that the troops can cross the river quickly. If you have to cross, and you bring your tanks and you bring your armored personnel carriers, and if you've got to bring them one single file across a bridge or double file across a bridge, it takes a long time. So God's in a hurry to get this done. Verse 13, and I saw 3 unclean spirits coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, and they are the spirits of demons which go out to the kings of the earth and the whole world, and they gathered them to battle. Okay? Jesus wants a battle. Jesus is coming to make war. He wants a battle. He wants the dead soldiers' bones to be all over the mountains of Israel, and he wants Israel to be burying the bones for 7 months after that first Feast of Tabernacles. And they gathered them together in the place called in Hebrew Armageddon, which means Tel Megiddo, which means the valley of Jezreel, is where they gather themselves. It's not where the battle takes place. Then they launch, it's like a 2-hour drive. If you were in Megiddo right now, you can do this on your GPS. It's amazing what you can do with GPS. But anyhow, you can get in a car at Megiddo and it'd take you a 2-hour drive to get down to Jerusalem. So this is the perfect place. It's a big, wide, flat valley. You can bivouac a lot of troops, and then the general who's ever in charge says, tomorrow morning, daybreak, we attack Jerusalem. So, question, where will you look? When you look at Revelation 16:13 through 16, would you say that Jesus is in a hurry to help the 200 million man army to get moving towards Jerusalem? Well, the drying up of the river, right? What do you have if you're trying to bring tanks across a river and the river's totally dry? What do? You just drive over the edge right of the river, down across the dry river bed, up on the other side, and you keep going. Takes no longer than 5 minutes, right? And remember when Putin was lining up his tanks single file to go into Ukraine, it's like we kept seeing these photographs of lines, long lines of tanks, some of them getting stuck in the mud, right? But in this case, you can have tanks side by side crossing the river Euphrates in like 5 minutes. You can move a lot of troops. So why dry up the river? To help the army cross the river quickly, right? So in God's mind, it's number 6. It's plague number 6. It's a blessing to the troops, but it's also a signal of their doom, because the sooner they get down to Jerusalem, the sooner they end up dead. Now, I checked on my GPS, and it says it takes about 9 hours and 20 minutes to drive from the river Euphrates to Megiddo. So, if you're how fast can a tank go? Anybody know?
Up to 60 miles an hour.
60. Whoa, that's clipping. All right. So the beast power empire and their soldiers are hopping mad at this alien force that's landed in Jerusalem, right? And they're going to drive 9 hours and 20 minutes, say at 60 miles an hour, right? Changing drivers, I guess, whatever, right? But they're in a hurry to get down to Megiddo to get this battle and to go attack Jerusalem and to kill all these White Horse Party people, How much longer would it take if the river Euphrates was full of water? Way longer, because you can't get your tanks wet. Right? They don't act like submarines. You've got to keep them dry, right? So 9 days after trumpets is the Day of Atonement, which is the Battle of Armageddon Day. Leviticus 16:34. This shall be the everlasting statute, and you shall make an atonement, meaning forgiveness, for the children of Israel, the nation of Israel, for all their sins once a year. And this is looking forward, right? As Paul tells us, all of the festivals look forward. So Israel, in all those years in the Old Testament, one day in the year they had the Day of Atonement. It was for forgiveness of all the sins of all the people of the whole nation of Israel. The giant Day of Atonement is the day where God forgives all nations of their sins, and his anger at the sin is ended. It's like God's wrath is complete with the 7th bowl of God's wrath. Revelation 15:1. The 7 angels, the 7 last plagues, and in them the wrath of God is complete. Well, at the end of the Day of Atonement back in Israel's days, where the high priest, by the time the goat was led over the hill and you could not see the goat or the guy leading the goat anymore, that was the end of the ceremony. So everybody went back to their tents, telling their kids and their grandkids, God has forgiven the nation of Israel of all of their sins from last year. So it's like, it's a serious day. They're fasting. They're looking forward to sunset like we do on the Day of Atonement, right? We'll pretty much know the precise moment of sunset in Russellville, right, for the Day of Atonement. It's just one of those things we like to know. Trumpets is looking forward to Christ appearing. Atonement looks forward to the end of God's wrath against the nations and the death of the empire, the beast's evil empire. And it looks forward to the Jubilee, which sadly, as far as I know, hasn't been observed by Israel, by the Jewish people. I mean, there might be somebody out there keeping the Jubilee because they figured out how to do it. But as far as I know, the Jews don't keep Jubilee, right? So they lost it throughout history. They did, it was one of the things they didn't do. So nobody knows when the Jubilee year is. But I'll bet, if I was a betting person, I'll bet you any kind of money that the coming Day of Atonement, when God defeats the beast power army, will be the Day of Atonement. It'll be the 50th year. It'll be the Jubilee year. It'll be when they blow the trumpet and they declare everybody is forgiven by God and everybody is set free. And probably for 1,000 years they'll keep the Jubilee year, right? Because it was part of God's plan and God's economy back, when He set things up. And then, like many things, people don't bother to keep the details of what God says. So Atonement looks forward to the end of God's wrath against the nations, the Jubilee, where the captives are set free. Leviticus 25:9, you shall cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month, on the Day of Atonement. You shall make the trumpet to sound throughout all your land. Now, back in the old days, how would they make the sound of the trumpet sound on the Jubilee, if they were doing it? How would they do it? They'd have a whole lot of trumpeters on this mountain, and a couple of miles away on that mountain, and a couple of miles away on that mountain, and they'd have a huge number of trumpeters blowing the trumpet, right? So it would have been a big, spectacular thing, but it's been lost in history. Cecil B. DeMille and Steven Spielberg, they haven't bothered to make a movie about this, so we don't know what it looks like, right? Verse 10, you shall consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty. So what is Jesus going to proclaim at the end of the Battle of Armageddon, when all the enemy soldiers are dead? Oh, and the beast and the false prophet are thrown in the lake of fire, and Satan is locked away in the bottomless pit. What's the obvious proclamation? The end of God's wrath. All humans are considered free and clean before God. We're starting afresh. We're starting a brand new. So come to the Feast of Tabernacles, right? So proclaim liberty throughout all the land to all the inhabitants. It is the Jubilee, and each of you shall return to his possession, and each of you shall return to his family, which we don't fully understand, because back in then you could sign on with another family as their servant for up until the Jubilee year. God is going to proclaim liberty to all nations of the world when the beast power and empire is destroyed and the humans are no longer destroying planet Earth. Revelation 16:17. Then the seventh angel poured out his bowl in the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple saying, it is done. Well, what kind of a plague is that? Right? Well, if it coincides with the last soldier died in the Battle of Armageddon, God's wrath is complete. It's done. It's finished. Everything is now going to be set free. The healing of the nations begins, right? Zechariah 14:16, will come to pass that everyone who is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem. What does that mean? The Battle of Armageddon. They went to Megiddo, they gathered their soldiers at Megiddo, They launched this attack, 2.5-hour drive down to Jerusalem, 2-hour drive, right? And on the way, they all got killed by various means. And now their bones and bodies are going to lie on the mountains of Israel. And for 7 years, 7 months, they'll be burying the bones. For 7 years, I mean, that, I can't picture that. I don't know what that looks like. But for 7 years, they'll be burning the weapons of war that the 200 million man army took with them down to Megiddo and then down to Jerusalem. Verse 17, whichever of the families of the earth don't come up to Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, there'll be no rain. So there'll be, and they specifically mention Egypt, which is Muslim right now, and Muslim people don't like Jesus. They don't like the Feast of Tabernacles. They don't like Jews. And so you can see how they might say, we're not going to Jerusalem to worship Jesus on the Feast of Tabernacles. And it's like, okay, no rain for you. So the first resurrection people will be given spirit-being bodies at the 7th trumpet, and they will be God family members at the great first Feast of Tabernacles of the 1,000 years. I reckon that'll be joyous. Reckon that'll be a celebration. Reckon that the prisoners, the Israeli prisoners who are in prison camps for 3.5 years, reckon that'll be joyous for them. What do you think Jesus will talk about in that first Feast of Tabernacles? Surely he'll be the keynote speaker, and probably the speaker every day. Right? One of his topics will surely be cleaning up after the battle of Armageddon. He'll say, go out and find the bones, and take the bones to the cemetery, and bury the bones in the cemetery for 7 months. And he figures that's how long it'll take, 7 months, and all the bones will be taken care of. Right? And then he says for 7 years, you'll be burning the weapons. Right? So hopefully you can use the heat from the fire in the wintertime or whatever. Ezekiel 39:9, then those of Israel will go out and set on fire and burn the weapons, and they will make fires with them for 7 years. And verse 12, for 7 months Israel will be burying the bones in order to cleanse the land. And so the Feast of Tabernacles, Jesus will fully explain these things, more than we can understand them now. And then for 1,000 years, the God family will be teaching humans how to keep the Feast of Tabernacles, keep the Feast of Trumpets, keep the Day of Atonement, and they'll be teaching humans how to live happily in peace and prosperity by serving their new King, Jesus.